Hello everyone, it's Bethany from Beth and Books and welcome back to this book nook. I'm just going to say straight from the beginning, if you've seen me in this outfit before, it's because it's a sunshiny-ish day in the middle of winter, so I'm taking advantage and bulk filming some content for you so we can stay consistent. So you're definitely going to see this outfit again, probably at least 2 times. But the video you've clicked on today is the mid-year freakout tag and a little bit of bonus content coming your way, in that I actually watched my 2021 freakout tag and we're going to do a little bit of reflection on that as well. So if you're interested in seeing how my reading year has gone so far, stay tuned. Keep on watching. I need to figure out what I want to say. Let's get straight into it. That would have been good. Alrighty, the first question is the good old classic. What is your favourite book of the year so far? Last year was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, book 1 in that duology. This year, we're going a complete, I'd say 180. We're going from some young adult romance to an adult thriller, like a psychological thriller. It is, There's Someone, no, that's the wrong book. Woman in the Window. Oh my gosh, I have notes right here as well. I was just too stubborn to look. The Woman in the Window. This book is, I'm going to say it, I think even better than Gillian Flynn's Gone Gal. I said it. In terms of like the psychological twists that this book throws your way, when I was reading it, I was like, I know there's going to be a plot twist. I know. And I came across the plot twist and I was like, wow, holy moly. But then there were like 3 other plot twists and it just absolutely blew my mind. So if you're someone who loves psychological thrillers, by all means, I highly, highly recommend picking this up. But just a heads up, please do your research when it comes to trigger warnings, because this is pretty much full of them. Almost everything you can imagine: alcoholism, drug abuse. I don't want to say too much because it does get a bit spoilery, but there's definitely triggers throughout it. The next question is, what has been the best sequel? Last year it was The Witcher 0.5, which is one of the, I always describe it as an anthology. It's like a collection of The Witcher's adventures, and I still really recommend that series. But this year's favourite sequel was Aristotle and Dante number 2, which is somewhere, actually. Where have I put it? Here. Dive into the waters of the world. Oh my gosh, this book all, I was going to say y'all, and then I didn't commit to the American slang. This book, y'all, I'll link a reading vlog when I was reading this, so you can get like all of my live reactions, but this has been the most emotional book for me that I've read in, I'm trying to think if I've ever cried like that over a book before. I don't think I've ever cried like that over a book before, ever. It's like, you know, something's coming. It says in the blurb that Ari is faced with a shocking loss, and so you know that there's going to be something that happens. And the whole time I'm like making speculation as to who or what happens, and then when it does happen, I didn't see it coming, and it really got me. If you haven't picked this up but you loved book 1, definitely pick it up. This is obviously a series I love because the first book was my favourite book last year. So love it. Love it, love it, love it. It's so heartwarming and cozy, yet heartbreaking and fascinating. The next question is the new release I really want to read but I haven't yet. My last year's one for this, I actually did end up purchasing. That one is the Grady Hendrix, The Final Girl Support Group, and no, I haven't read it yet. I really need to get around to it. It sounds so good, and it even has like the I didn't know this when I first started talking about it, but it's got like little bits and pieces, like the paraphernalia in it. Like, oh, I need to get to this. I'm gonna do a spin the wheel for July. Hopefully I can weave this in. But in terms of my favourite, like most anticipated new release for this year, I've got none. You may have noticed I haven't been doing my most excited for series, and it's simply because I have so many books already. I don't want to... it felt disingenuous saying, hey guys, these are some books that sound really good that I really want to read, knowing that I wasn't about to go pick them up or try to get around to them. So 2022 for me is attempting to read more of the books I already have on my shelves, and I feel like 2023, or whenever I feel like I've caught up, is going to be more like, okay, so what came out in 2022 that was really good? Because, I don't know, the thing as well with new releases, I know this is a tangent, but for me the thing with new releases is I'm trying really hard not to get caught up in the purchasing, the consumerism of books. If you love buying books, add to your collection, go for it. But for me, I'm coming from a place of consumerism, and I want to try and quell and squash that. So looking at new releases just makes me want to buy books, and then I'm not getting around to reading them. I don't have as much money in my savings. It's just not a viable thing for me at the moment. So we'll see what happens. All right, the biggest disappointment last year for me was Girl, Serpent, Thorn. I cannot tell you anything about that book. I've completely erased it from my memory. But this year is actually, oh no, not that one. Oh, it's at the bottom of my unhaul pile. Video coming soon. It's the Atticus poetry collections. If you don't know, Atticus is an Instagram poet who is really quite popular. I have no idea how many followers he has actually, but he's really, really popular. And I really thought I would enjoy his stuff when I purchased this about 8 years ago, I think. I remember buying his first book when it first came out, and then I never read it, and then I bought his second collection, and then I never read that for ages. I finally read it this year. And I mean, my Goodreads review kind of sums it all up. Here is my Goodreads review. It was just a really bad collection of poetry, and like, I totally recognize if it resonated with you, then it will. Like, poetry is such a personal thing, but it just didn't do it for me. There wasn't enough there. And this isn't a slam against Instagram poetry as a whole at all. There is some beautiful poetry out there. And really, what is Instagram poetry? It's basically a poem that'll fit in a square. If that's all that Instagram poetry is, then just make the font small enough and a sonnet could fit in it. You know what I mean? But I guess it's about the challenge of bringing something new to the table and being concise and being able to evoke something with only a few words, and this collection just doesn't do it for me. It was the most disappointing 2 books that I've read so far this year, sadly. Next question, the biggest surprise. Last year it was a historical novel that I really didn't think would intrigue me. This year it's Milk Fed. This is a book that was sent to me very kindly, thank you, by Bloomsbury, making sure I got the right publisher house. And this surprised me because I'd been putting off reading it for so long, like forever and ever. I really was not excited to pick it up. But once I did, it is so good. It's an adult sapphic novel. We follow Jewish characters, which, by the way, I learned so much about Judaism from reading this book. And yes, I know it's fictional, but it has an accurate representation of the religion and belief. So, you know, I learned from it. And so I just found it really good. I thought the characters really intriguing. You have, well, your main character who, I can't remember names. I'm so bad with character names. Why am I even a booktuber? But yeah, the main character, she doesn't really practice Judaism anymore, whereas her love interest is heavily into that side of her culture and her family. And it's just a story of finding yourself, love, relationships, finding the right space for you in your religion and that sort of thing. It was just a really pleasant surprise. Again, please make sure you do your research with triggers, because this one is rife with them, the main one being an eating disorder. My favourite new author last year was Jennifer L. Armentrout, because I read that Blood and Ash book and then the second book, and I'll be honest, I haven't read any more from her, so I don't know if I can call her a favourite author because I've only read 2 of her books. I didn't even finish her series. The books are really hard to get your hands on in New Zealand unless you want to pay a lot of money for them. But this year's favourite author is Tamora Pierce. Now, she wrote Tempests and Slaughter, which I devoured, 5 stars. It was honestly going to be one of my, like, the answer to my favourite book, but I thought I'd save it to now. I really loved it. I describe it as Harry Potter, but better. But in reality, the better is just like, you know, Harry Potter for a bit of an older audience. I just thought it was fantastic. I just really, really loved it. I loved the writing style, and from there I actually discovered that Pierce has about 20 books published, and all of them kind of come from the same world. So then I went back to the beginning and read the original quartet. So I've read 5 of Tamora Pierce's books, and I've loved every single one of them. I'm totally aware that there is elements of white saviorism in the original quartet, and there are elements of sexism as well throughout her books. But, and I'm not defending sexism, I just want to make that clear, but the time it's called for, and the fact that as a modern reader we can critique that, it's not that bad. let's not cancel every single book, especially not old books. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Tamora Pierce, love her writing style. The next question is my newest fictional crush and newest favourite character. Last year I mentioned the fact that I really don't get romantically invested in individual characters. I can totally ship characters. I totally get that in romance novels. I totally understand those and can get behind the relationships, but I never personally crush on anyone. Last year I talked about Nesta being my favourite character. So this year I was like, who's been my favourite character? Take away the romance from it, merge the 2 questions together, favourite character, favourite like crush. I think I really enjoyed Cersei. Now, I read Cersei for a book club. This is Madeline Miller's book, by the way. And I just really enjoyed learning more about her character, her myths, her legends, the story surrounding her. I think she had a really interesting story, awesome character development, and I just found her really fascinating. And also, I was surprised by how much I liked it, because I'm not one very much for classics, but the way that I had actually read Odyssey beginning of this year. I read the Odyssey. Maybe it was the end of last year, actually. What feels like recently, I read the Odyssey. And just having that knowledge, then coming to Cersei and everything connecting together, seeing Odysseus, it was just, I really enjoyed it, and I just loved her character. So, yeah, I really liked Cersei. The book which made me cry the most last year was The Green Mile, a Stephen King book. This year, you already know, is the Ari and Dante book. It just is. The next question is the flip of that. What made you the happiest? Last year I talked about how the kiss quotient, I still stumble and doubt myself whenever I say that word, made me happy, because even though it wasn't necessarily the happiest of books, it was like a feel-good kind of story. That's so hypocritical. If you've read it, you probably know what I mean. But this year, the book that made me feel the happiest, the smiliest, was actually the first 5-star book I read, which was Battle Royal. And it's basically the Great British Bake Off with a romance subplot. And it's stellar. So stellar. And whilst it has like a springtime undertone, those of us in the Southern Hemisphere in the middle of cold winter at the moment, I also think it's the perfect cozy read that you just bundle up and makes you feel good. It's just a real feel good book. Definitely adult. There's definitely some adult moments, if you know what I mean, if you want a little bit of chili in your wedding cake. But it's one of those books that had me smiling and laughing. I loved the character interactions. It was brilliant. I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. Icing on the cake. Go home, Bethany. Oh, I'm really excited to show you this one. This is the prettiest book. Last year, my prettiest book was The Shadows Between Us. I have since unsold that novel. But this one is actually a book I haven't had a chance to show off yet, and it is Grimm's Fairy Tales. This is a book that Titus purchased me because in a conversation we had, I mentioned that I've always had a fascination with the original fairy tales and how they're like meant to be really gruesome, because I've mentioned it a few times before, my favourite classical book is possibly Frankenstein, because I am intrigued by the idea of this fictional novel character and how Hollywoodized it's become. It's kind of the same with Grimm's Fairy Tale, that idea that these are some original stories that have been taken and evolved into a more popular image, perhaps. I mean, definitely with, youth, your children don't know the gruesome Hansel and Gretel. You know, that is actually pretty gruesome. You know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. But this is a beautiful hardcover book. This one is Philip Pullman, so the Golden Compass dude, who I believe is the translator, the editor. I need to do research, definitely. But it's even got like a red ribbon. It's just so pretty, and I cannot wait to read it. And one of those books I keep putting off because I really want to like it, hence why it's still on my shelf, not in my basket. And then the last question, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I actually created a 2022 bucket list at the beginning of this year, so I'll definitely leave a link to that video. But to run through the 10 books on there, if you have seen that video or you just don't want to watch it, which is totally fine, is The Goldfinch, Furyborn, Call Down the Hawk, Priory of the Orange Tree, The Kite Runner, And Then There Were None, It Ends With Us, A Little Life, Dark Dawn, The City of Brass. Well, I have read Furyborn, and I have read It Ends With Us, so I've read 2 out of my 10. So I've got a bit of catching up to do if I want to read my bucket list. So anticipate seeing those in future vlogs, in videos, that sort of stuff, because I do really want to get them. Priory of the Orange Tree, I have started. In fact, it's right here. Oh, it's just such a big book. I got to page 144, which is that, and all of this which is left. So, you know, I just need to keep making my progress, But I don't want to make this video longer than it has to be, looking like we're under the 20-minute mark, which is always ideal for you guys. So if you want to answer any of the questions from this, tag yourselves in the comments. I'd be so interested to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Enjoy all the places you go in your own reading adventures, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.